Hey everyone, and on today's show we're going to be looking at 7 things that I love about my utter guilty pleasure James Bond movie, Die Another Day. And that's happening in 3, 2, 1... Do you know what? A lot of people out there are very much in the mindset of Die Another Day. It's a bit of an embarrassment in the Bond franchise. It's like a moonraker to some, where it just went too far with the stupidity, and I can't deny that. You know, we did have the invisible car, we had the weird sort of MTV editing at some point, and of course the thing that I'm really trying to not mention because I know I'm just going to go bursting into laughter, but I can't again. Surfing a tsunami. Oh my god. But despite all that, I've always really had a bit of a soft spot for Die Another Day. Die Another Day is without a doubt the guilty pleasure James Bond film for me. I absolutely love it. I have, again, as I say, a soft spot for it because it was the first James Bond film I actually got to see at the cinema. And on that note, thanks to my parents for sneaking me at the age of 11 to see a 12 rated film. But with all the faults and all the things people say about it, I have to admit, there are quite a few things in the film I really do like and do appreciate. So that's what I wanted to discuss in today's video. I wanted to look at Die Another Day and give you my 7 things that I love about Die Another Day. But before we get into that, everyone, can I ask already, if you haven't, do give us a like, comment and subscribe. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, so if you can help us, that would be absolutely amazing. So with that all being said, let's get into the first thing that I love about Die Another Day. Clearly the first thing that shall have a doubt is my main man himself. That is the legendary actor, the best James Bond in my opinion, Pierce Brosnan. Pierce Brosnan is my childhood hero. He's my icon of James Bond. When I think about James Bond, he's the face that I put to the name. And again, in this film, despite it not being the best material he had in his tenure, he gives an absolutely amazing performance here. I love this film in a sense that it actually in places gives Pierce Brosnan a bit of chance to do some different things with James Bond and really show off in places his acting skills. Yeah, he does have his traditional things he says and does, but I absolutely love him in this film. He's so wonderful in it. I think a perfect example of this is actually if you look at it at the beginning after the title sequence, where he's interrogating how he's acting and then how he acts to feeling he's been betrayed and how he feels like his own friends are letting him go and stuff. You can just see the anger in Bond, and Brosnan conveys that so well. And then when he gets to the bit when he's meeting with Gustav Graves and you have the great Bond versus villain banter, you can tell that Brosnan's chewing it up and enjoying it and really trying to make it as great as he can. Oh, just always to this day, whenever Pierce Brosnan's in a movie, I will watch it. And for me, definitely the first thing that I love about Die Another Day is, again, it had my childhood hero version of James Bond, Pierce Brosnan, in it, and he did still give an absolutely amazing performance. The second thing would be definitely, I think, to be fair, for the most part, the action sequences in Die Another Day are spectacular. Now, it's well documented that MGM wanted a much more action-heavy James Bond film because of the recent successes of other action films at the time, and boy, to be fair, the action in Die Another Day I think strongly delivers. Let's start off with the pre-title sequence action scene, which is that great hovercraft chase scene in Korea. That was, I think, absolutely spectacular, and it's a scene that I love to watch again and again and again, just on its own. Really great, really new, and I still think no one else has really done hovercraft as well as what Die Another Day did. And then again, moving on to that, you got the great Bond versus Gustav Graves fencing fight, which was absolutely incredible. You've also got, in my opinion, an amazing car chase of the Aston Martin Vanquish versus the Jaguar on the ice. Both have gadgets fighting off each other in the ice palace. Absolutely terrific. And again, the end fight sequences, the hand-to-hand combat between Jinx and Miranda Frost and Bond versus Gustav Graves. Yet in the Robocop suit, I can't deny that. But overall, definitely for me, the action was just hitting on all stations here. And I think it's a great example for the most part about when you do practical effects in action sequences, it really does pay off. The third thing that I love about Die Another Day is something I've mentioned briefly a bit when it came to the action sequences, but I love the villains in Die Another Day. You start off with Colonel Moon, who I think is a great opening pre-title sequence villain. I'll count Gustav Graves slightly separately down the line. But then you've got, in my opinion, one of the best henchmen in the entire Bond franchise. This guy's definitely in my top 3 with Zhao. Zhao is interesting, he's dangerous, I think he's really engaging when you ever see him on screen. He's a real threat to Bond, and that's what I really like. This henchman, for me, is a great example of how to do a henchman right in the Bond franchise, by also making him really menacing, yet you really just can't stop watching him, and you hate it when he's not on screen, and you just love it when he's on screen facing off against Bond. And then you've obviously got the other henchwoman in this film, which is Miranda Frost. Again, a great performance by a very early Rosamund Pike. She's fantastic in this film, using the same weapons as Bond, sometimes against him, really being a great foil for Jinx as well. I remember coming out of Die Another Day thinking Halle Berry's alright, but for me, the real true Bond leading lady of Die Another Day was Rosamund Pike's Miranda Frost, without a shadow of a doubt. She's great in all scenes she's in. She nearly steals the show from all the other villains, but there is a king in Die Another Day, and that is Toby Stephens' Gustav Graves. Now, a lot of people say he's so over the top, he's so cheesy, he's so just bad because he's so like all those things, but do you know what? I freaking love Toby Stephens in this film. I love the fact that he's so over the top, and Gustav Graves knows he's the villain, and he is enjoying it to the max, and the banter fighting between him and Bond, it's absolutely wonderful. Every moment Toby Stephens is on screen, I'm just like, I'm loving this Bond villain. I truly am, and I want to see more and more and more of him. Even when he wears the stupid RoboCop suit, it's still great, and I'll always love his little one-liners he puts back at Bond as well. It's absolutely superb. Toby Stephens is one of those actors I think is just truly amazing and elevates everything he's in. And for me, definitely, even here, he elevated this Bond movie. The next thing on my list is definitely the Q scene. Now, to be fair, I'd like to give a bit of a disclosure here. Q scene's always great highly for me in any part of a Bond film, and John Cleese is an actor I was very much aware of from a very young age. I love his style of comedy, I love his presence on screen, always makes me happy to see him. When I saw him in World's Not Enough, I got really excited thinking this is going to be Desmond Llewellyn's replacement eventually. I think it happened a bit sooner than what was expected, understandably, but I really love John Cleese as Q. I really did enjoy him in the film. I thought he did it really well. He was different from Desmond Llewellyn, but the same in the right and wrong places. I like how his banter with Bond elevates throughout the scene. You can tell they're both a bit like, do you really deserve the rank of Q? Do I really actually like you? But you see that friendship develop within this whole Q scene, and it's a great Q scene. It was a nice nod for me. This was like one of the best moments in Die Another Day to reference the history of the Bond franchise by showing all the old school gadgets and having fun with them. It really, really worked. And heck, I just really come back to this. John Cleese is really one of my favourite actors, and I loved him as Q. I got him again as Q in the Bond game Everything or Nothing. And I really do truly wish that we could have got more John Cleese as Q, but alas, the series went the way it did. But again, another highlight for me, without a shadow of a doubt, is John Cleese as Q. The fourth thing I really love in Die Another Day, and again, another controversial choice, but hear me out on this, it's the Ice Palace. Look, I love it in a Bond film where every now and then a Bond villain gets this really bombastic, incredible, if you will, effective villain lair. I'm talking about the volcano lair in You Only Live Twice, Drax's, orbiting satellite. You've got, Silver's private island. You've got, Safin's own private island. You've got all these great locations that are just fantastic, and you just remember them. And for me, I always loved the Ice Palace. I thought it was so bombastic. It would be something I think you could have seen in an Ian Fleming novel, potentially back in the 60s. And, I just think it was a great location. It was interesting. It was a unique thing to the film. You had some great action and story within it. They really used it well. And when I think about Die Another Day, one of the icons of it is that amazing, awesome Ice Palace. Such a real Bond villainy thing to have, and I'm just glad they used it so well in so many different ways. So how can you complain about that, to me, where you use a location, whether over the top ridiculous as it was or not, but they use it so fantastically. So yeah, when it comes to locations in a Bond film, definitely the Ice Palace for me is one of the things I just really love in this film. So my next one on my list is something I mentioned previously in the action sequence, but I want to just give a special mention to it here, which is the whole sequence involving fencing. Now, for disclosure, despite what you think of my appearance, I actually have done fencing and still do a bit of fencing. I really enjoy it. I'm an FAS and saber person myself, foil, not so much. So I really did enjoy the whole fencing section in Die Another Day, and I just love the banter that Bond has with Graves in this scene. It's great for me, pure joy of cinematic Bond, seeing the Bond villain banter. And then with the up the weapons and then the fight sequence that happens after, I was so engaged. I was like, oh, this is so cool. Still to this day, I think this is one of the most coolest things ever put on screen in a Bond film. The whole Bond and swords together. I wish that you did have more in the series, to be fair, Bond and swords. But it's a great scene because it builds and builds and builds and builds, as well as the great tension between the two. For me, it just really works. A bit of Bond theme playing in there, absolutely fantastic. And so we come to the final one, the seventh thing that I love in Die Another Day, and this is speaking to the inner car enthusiast to me, but oh my god, the Aston Martin Vanquish here is one of the most sexiest cars ever. I mean, this car was just beautiful, and to have this, the return of the Aston Martin, I have so many mixed feelings about this, but I do love this Aston Martin. It looks sleek, it's an incredible car. If I could own an Aston Martin, I would have a V12 Vanquish. That is definitely the car I would go for, but I've got to be fair, I think a lot of that as well is building up to the fact that through GoldenEye up to Also Enough, for me, we had some of the worst cars in Bond history, the BMWs. So finally a return to Aston Martin, not just any Aston Martin, this beautiful, incredible looking machine, equipped with some amazing new Bond gadgets. It was just, honestly, it was one of my favourite things in the movie. But again, to be fair, it was ruined by some dunderhead idea that we have one of the most beautifulest cars in the world. What are we going to do? We're going to turn it invisible. I mean, that is still, to me, is one of the most dumbest ideas I've ever seen in a film. But you know what? The Aston Martin is still one of the most beautiful cars I've ever seen. And for me, it's definitely one of the things I love in Die Another Day, because every time I see it, it's like, oh, that's such a Bond car. I want that car. I really, 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 really want that car. I want someone to buy me that car. I want to earn enough money to buy that car. Well, everyone, that is the end of the 7 things that I love about Die Another Day. But I want to know, what did you think about the movie? What are your 7 things maybe potentially you loved about the movie or disliked about the movie? Comment down below and definitely tell me your thoughts and feelings about this. As always, everyone, my name is Henry Stevens and I'm the Bond Geek. Goodbye.